A couple of days ago, I was surfing on Reddit and looking at the LSAT subreddit, and a user named Tutti Frutti Cutie posted a really good question about the word many and what the word many means on the LSAT. And a lot of people weighed in with their thoughts about this. It actually turned into like this barroom brawl between LSAT tutors, talking about what many actually means on the LSAT. And so I added, my comments and a few thoughts about it. And this is just a good reminder of how confusing this topic is for a lot of people who are studying for the LSAT. These words like some and many and most, and the exact way that the LSAT uses them. So I decided to throw together some slides and make a video about this. I don't really have anything better to do right now. Well, actually, I'm supposed to be working on my taxes, but ugh. So anyway, let's talk about these words. What we're talking about here are quantified statements. Three really common quantifier words that appear on the LSAT are some, most, and all. Let's imagine that I have a box that has 5 balls in it, and I tell you that all of the balls in this box are green. If this statement is true, then all 5 balls are going to be green. If even one of the balls in the box is not green, then the statement wouldn't be true. So all is pretty straightforward. All means all, every single one. And often if we see words like all or every on the LSAT, we're actually talking about conditional logic. And I'll talk a little more about conditional logic at the very end of the video. Let's talk about some. So again, we have 5 balls in a box, and I tell you that some of the balls in the box are green. If we look in the dictionary, some is defined as at least a small amount or number. And this is pretty useful because the LSAT uses words very literally. If we're ever in doubt about what a word means on the LSAT, we can err on the side of using the strict dictionary definition. And some in the dictionary is defined as at least a small amount or number. We can simplify this a little bit and say that some means more than 0. If I say that some of the balls in the box are green and you look in the box and none of them are green, well, that would mean my statement is false. What if just one of the balls is green? Well, again, some is at least a small amount or number, and one is a small amount. One is more than 0, so this would be okay. My statement that some of the balls in the box are green would be true even if just one of the balls is green. What if 3 of them are green? Yeah, that's fine. Again, some doesn't tell us the maximum amount of anything. It's at least a small amount or number, more than 0. So it could be 3. What if all 5 are green? Now, this is where it gets a little weird because in everyday conversation, if I meant all, I would just say all. But what the LSAT is often going to do is they're going to give us some information and they're going to test our ability to understand what is certain, what must be true. So if some of the balls in the box are green, what does that mean? What must be true? It must be true that one or more is green. But we don't know how many more are green. It could be all of them. Remember, the definition of some is at least a small amount or number. It doesn't give us a maximum, so all 5 could be green. 5 is more than 0. So as weird as it sounds, if I say some of the balls in this box are green and that statement is true, it could be true that all 5 balls are green. And here's how the LSAT might try to confuse you with this. They might give you a few statements in a stimulus, like some of the balls in a box are green, some of the balls in the box are made of plastic, and they may give you a few other statements too. And then they're going to ask, if the statements above are true, which of the following must be true? They might give you an answer that says some of the balls in the box are not green. And that would be an incorrect answer. That would not be a correct answer. If some of the balls in a box are green, the only thing that must be true is that at least one is green, that one or more is green. So it could be true that all 5 are green. And again, this might seem weird based on the way we use the word some in everyday conversation, but we need to think about the exact definition of some and what we're certain of, what must be true. What about most? If there are 5 balls in a box and I say most of the balls in this box are green, what does that mean? Again, going back to the dictionary, most is defined as the greatest amount or quantity. And we can simplify this a little bit and say that most means more than half. So if my statement is true, that most of the balls in this box are green, we know that at least 3 out of 5 balls are green. If only 2 of the balls were green, then it wouldn't be most. More than half of the balls have to be green. So what if it's 4 out of 5? Yeah, that's totally fine. That's more than half. What if it's all 5? Again, this is a little weird because this is not how we use the word most in everyday conversation, but just going by the strict definition, yes, 5 is more than half. So if it's true that most of the balls in this box are green, it could be true that all 5 are green. If you're looking at that first definition, the greatest amount or quantity, well, if all 5 are green and I ask you how many balls are red, the answer is 0. If I ask you how many are blue, the answer is 0. And 5 is greater than 0. If I say that I am the greatest LSAT instructor in my house right now, that's absolutely true because it's just me and the dogs don't teach LSAT. So I might be the only LSAT instructor in my house right now, but it would also be true that I am the greatest one, even if there's nobody else to compare to. And again, one way they might try to fool you with this on the LSAT is very similar to what they'll do with some. This is basically the same example. I just replaced the word some in the first sentence with the word most. If we're told that most of the balls in a box are green and we are asked what else must be true, and they give us an answer that says some of the balls in the box are not green, that would be an incorrect answer. We don't know if that's true, just like with some. So what about words like many, a few, and several? Well, if you look at these words for a moment, you might be able to rank them in your mind, in terms of which one means a greater amount than others. What do you think? You might be thinking something like this. So a few might be just a very small number, right? Like maybe just 2. Several seems like it would be more than a few, right? Maybe 3 or 4. And many seems like a lot, right? And if we look at the dictionary definitions, it actually ends up being pretty similar to this. A few is defined as a small number. Several is defined as more than 2, but not many. And many is defined as a large number. This is all still pretty vague, right? None of these tell us necessarily exactly how many people or things we're talking about. And in fact, there seems to be a little overlap, right? Like if several is more than 2, that might only be 3 or 4, and that could be considered a small number. So several and a few could maybe mean the same thing. And several is not many, but again, how many is many? So again, it can help to remember that the LSAT is often testing our ability to understand what is certain, what must be true. And in each of these cases, with many, several, or a few, the thing that must be true is that all of these mean more than 0. That's what we're certain of. Many, several, a few, they all mean some quantity or number more than 0. More than 0 is basically our definition of some. And this is why a lot of people will say that on the LSAT, you can treat many, several, or a few as if they mean the same thing as some. This is what that's based on. It's based on what we can be certain of when each of these words is used, what must be true. Most of the time, this works just fine on the LSAT. You can interpret all these words to just mean some, and you will get the correct answer. This is the idea that I've been going with for a long time when teaching people about these words. But based on that barroom brawl in Reddit a couple days ago, I'm actually going to add a little footnote to this. People brought up a couple of legitimate examples from actual LSAT questions where we would want to think more carefully about the exact meaning of many. And I'm always looking to improve the way that I teach things. So I'm going to start adding a footnote to the way that I explain this. We're still going to remember that some just means more than 0. We don't know how many more than 0, just that some is more than 0. So if we're looking at these words like many, a few, some, and we need to understand what is certain, what do we know for sure must be true, then a lot of times we're going to fall back on that definition of more than 0, because that's all we really know is that it's more than 0. There may occasionally be times where you'll want to remember that many actually means a large number and a few actually means a small number. And I don't think that's too hard to remember because it's in line with the way we use these words in everyday conversation. And in the questions I've seen where this is going to make a difference, there's usually a pretty good indication that we have to think about the exact meaning of many. that it's actually a large number. And this just highlights something that's always been true about the LSAT, which is you have to read what's on the page. You have to read the information that they're giving you. You can't just rely on really simple rules or simple tricks. Even if there are some guidelines that work really well most of the time, there are going to be exceptions. You've got to read the information they're giving you. At the beginning of the video, I said I would talk a little more about conditional logic, those all and every statements. I've started running some free online workshops that focus on conditional logic and clear up some of the misunderstandings and confusion that people have about that topic. If you're interested in attending one of those free online workshops, they usually last about an hour. You can go to my website, scottmillercoaching.com/LSAT, enter your email address there, and I will let you know when the next one of those free workshops is coming up. I hope this was helpful. I hope it helps you start knocking down some of these questions that involve quantified statements, and hopefully understanding more specifically what these words mean helps you work through these questions more quickly and effectively. Take care.